The rain fell in steady silver sheets over the narrow streets of Valmont City, a coastal town where old money still whispered through marble halls and hidden backrooms. It was the kind of place where appearances mattered more than truth, and everyone knew the rules even if they never spoke them aloud. My name is Elena Voss, 27 years old, former junior architect at a respected firm, and, until that night, the fiancé of Marcus Vale. Marcus was everything a woman in my position was supposed to want. Tall, polished, with an easy smile that could charm investors and old ladies alike. His family, the Vallas, ran one of the largest shipping and logistics companies on the eastern seaboard. Our wedding was 4 months away. The invitations had already been printed on heavy cream cardstock with gold embossing. I trusted him completely. That trust died on a Thursday evening in October. I had left work early, carrying a small box of pastries from the bakery Marcus loved. I wanted to surprise him at his downtown apartment. The doorman waved me through with a familiar nod. I rode the elevator up to the 14th floor, humming softly under my breath. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I heard it, soft laughter, the low murmur of voices, and then a sound that made my stomach drop. A woman's moan, intimate and unmistakable. My hand trembled as I turned the key. The door opened without a sound. There, on the wide leather sofa that faced the rain-streaked windows, was Marcus. His shirt was unbuttoned, his trousers around his ankles. On top of him moved a woman with long dark hair, someone I recognized immediately. Sophia Loron, my own bridesmaid and supposed best friend since college. They didn't even notice me at first. I stood frozen in the doorway, the pastry box slipping from my fingers and hitting the hardwood with a dull thud. The sound finally broke through. Marcus's had snapped toward me, eyes wide with shock that quickly melted into something colder. Irritation, almost annoyance, as if I had interrupted an important meeting. "Elena," he said, pushing Sophia off him and reaching for his pants. "This isn't." "Don't." I cut him off. My voice sounded strangely calm, even to my own ears. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Sophia had the decency to look ashamed, pulling her dress up over her shoulders. She avoided my eyes. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not there. I simply turned around, left the apartment, and walked back into the rain. The pastries lay scattered on the floor behind me like tiny white flags of surrender. That night I sat in my small rented apartment on the edge of the city, staring at the engagement ring on my finger. A 2-carat diamond that had once made me feel chosen. Now it felt like a brand. I could have walked away quietly, canceled the wedding, returned the gifts, let the gossip circle spin for a few weeks until something juicier came along. But something inside me had cracked open, and what spilled out wasn't sadness. It was cold, precise rage. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me. He had played me for months, maybe years. I later learned through quiet conversations with mutual friends that Sophia wasn't the first. There had been others. And every time, he had come back to me with the same charming smile, the same promises. He thought I was safe, predictable, someone who would swallow the humiliation to keep the lifestyle and the social standing. He was wrong. The next morning, I did the only thing that made sense in my shattered world. I started gathering information. Marcus's family was powerful, but they weren't the only powerful family in Valmont. There was another name that carried heavier weight in certain circles, the Voss family. They controlled ports, nightclubs, construction contracts, and things that never appeared on official balance sheets. Marcus had an older brother, not blood-related in the legal sense, but raised together after their mother married into the Voss line. His name was Raphael Voss. Everyone who mattered simply called him Rafe. Rafe was the one who had taken the family's darker operations and turned them into something almost legitimate on the surface, while keeping the steel underneath. He was rarely seen in the glittering charity galas that Marcus loved. He preferred the shadows. I had met him only once, at an engagement dinner 6 months earlier. He had sat at the head of the long table, silent for most of the evening, watching everything with dark, unreadable eyes. When our gazes met across the candles, he had given me the smallest nod, polite, nothing more. That nod was all I had. 3 days after catching Marcus and Sophia, I made my move. I dressed carefully. Not seductive, but intentional. A simple black dress that skimmed my figure, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. I drove to the old warehouse district near the harbor, where the Montivas family kept one of their legitimate offices. The building looked like any other shipping company from the outside. Inside, it was something else. Security stopped me at the entrance. "I need to see Rafael Montivas," I said evenly. "Tell him it's Elena Voss. He'll know the name." They made me wait 40 minutes in a stark waiting room with leather chairs and no magazines. Finally, a tall man in a dark suit led me through a series of corridors and into a private elevator that opened directly into a spacious office overlooking the water. Rafe stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in his pockets, watching cargo ships move slowly across the bay. He turned when I entered. He was taller than Marcus, broader in the shoulders, with the kind of presence that made the air feel heavier. His hair was darker, almost black, and there was a faint scar that cut through one eyebrow. His eyes, the same stormy gray as his brother's, but infinitely colder, studied me without surprise. "Elena," he said. His voice was low, controlled. I heard what happened. Of course he had. In families like theirs, secrets traveled faster than light. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I want to destroy him," I said simply. "Not just embarrass him. I want to take everything he values. His reputation, his position in the company, his future. And I need your help to do it." Rafe's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or amusement. "Why come to me?" he asked. "Because you're the only one who can. And because I know you don't particularly like your brother." He walked slowly around his desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms. "Marcus has always been the golden child on paper," he said. "The one who smiles for cameras and shakes hands with politicians. I handle the parts of the business that require different skills. He resents that I hold the real power. And yes, I don't like him much." I took a step closer. "Then use me," I said. "I'll give you whatever you need. Information. Access. Whatever it takes. I'll even—" I stopped because the next words were dangerous. Rafe waited. "I'll sleep with you," I finished, my voice steady even though my heart hammered. "If that's what it costs. Publicly enough that it gets back to him. Privately enough that it destroys his pride. Whatever you want." For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched Rafe's lips. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of a man who had heard every offer and every threat the world could make. "You're offering yourself as a weapon," he said quietly. "I'm offering the truth," I replied. "I have nothing left to lose except the chance to make this right." He studied me for a long moment, the harbor lights reflecting in his eyes. "Sit down, Elena," he said at last. I sat. Over the next hour, we talked. Not about revenge in dramatic terms, but in cold, practical ones. Rafe already knew many of Marcus's weaknesses: hidden debts, side deals that skirted the edges of legality, a pattern of using the family name to cover personal indiscretions. But he had never moved against his brother because family, even fractured family, still meant something in their world. I gave him the missing pieces. Personal details Marcus had shared with me over late-night conversations. Passwords I had seen him use. Names of the women before Sophia. Locations of private accounts. Rafe listened without judgment. When I finished, he leaned back. "There'll be consequences," he warned. "For both of us. Marcus won't go quietly. And once this starts, you won't be able to step back into your old life." "I don't want my old life," I said. He nodded once. "Then we begin." The plan was never crude. It wasn't about public scandal or leaked videos. It was surgical. First, I continued to play the Heartbroken Fiancé in public. I met with wedding planners and cried in front of mutual friends. I let the gossip spread that Marcus had been unfaithful, but I never named Sophia. Let them speculate. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Rafe and I began to move. I started visiting the Montivas offices under the pretense of discussing business matters related to the upcoming merger between Vale Shipping and one of Montivas's legitimate subsidiaries. Marcus noticed. He called me, angry and confused, demanding to know why I was speaking to his brother. I told him the truth, twisted just enough. Someone has to clean up the mess you made. The first time Rafe and I crossed the line was 3 weeks later. It happened in the same office overlooking the harbor after midnight. The city lights glittered below us like scattered diamonds. We had been reviewing documents for hours, the tension between us thickening with every shared silence. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, not with pity but with recognition. As if he saw the same cold fire in me that lived in him. The kiss was not gentle. It was inevitable. Clothes came off in quiet urgency. His hands were sure, experienced but never rough. He took his time, watching my face as if measuring every reaction. When we finally came together on the wide couch in the corner of his office, it felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying and freeing at the same time. Afterward, we lay in silence while the rain started again outside. "You don't have to do this part if you don't want to," he said quietly, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my shoulder. "I want to," I answered.
And it was true.
Not because I had fallen for him. Not yet, but because every time I closed my eyes, I still saw Marcus and Sophia on that sofa. This was my way of burning that image away. We were careful at first. Private. But word traveled, as it always does in families like theirs. Marcus found out a month later. He stormed into my apartment one evening, eyes blazing. "You slept with him?" he shouted. "My own brother? Are you out of your mind?" I stood calmly in the kitchen, stirring tea I didn't intend to drink. "Yes," I said. Multiple times. The look on his face was everything I had hoped for, rage, disbelief, and underneath it, the sharp sting of humiliation. "You're nothing but a whore," he spat. I smiled for the first time in weeks. "No, Marcus. I'm the woman who finally saw you clearly." He left, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. From that point, the real destruction began. Rafe moved with surgical precision. Using the information I provided and his own resources, he started quietly pulling threads. Marcus's hidden accounts were exposed in internal audits. Several of his side deals, the ones that had personally enriched him at the company's expense, came to light. Investors began to pull back. Board members who had once overlooked his behavior started asking uncomfortable questions. Marcus fought back, of course. He tried to paint me as the unstable ex-fiancé seeking revenge. He even attempted to leak stories about my supposed affair with Rafe, thinking it would discredit me. It backfired, because by then, Rafe had decided to make our relationship public in his own controlled way. We appeared together at a quiet charity event, not holding hands, but standing close enough that the message was clear. The photograph circulated in the right circles. Marcus's humiliation grew. The final blow came 2 months later. At the annual Vale Montevas shareholders meeting, Rafe stood at the podium. Marcus sat in the front row, expecting to be named in some joint statement. Instead, Rafe announced a restructuring. Vale shipping would be absorbed under stricter Montevas oversight. Marcus was being removed from his executive position effective immediately, pending further internal investigation into financial irregularities. The room went silent. Marcus stood up, face pale. "You can't do this." Rafe looked at him directly for the first time that evening. I already did. Security escorted Marcus out. Later that night, I sat with Rafe on the terrace of his cliffside home, the sea crashing far below. The engagement ring I had once worn was gone, sold. The proceeds quietly donated to a women's shelter in the city. "Do you feel better?" Rafe asked, handing me a glass of wine. I thought about it. "I feel free," I said. "Not happy."
Not yet.
"But free." He nodded. We had never pretended this was love at the beginning. It had started as revenge, as power, as two damaged people using each other to balance the scales. But somewhere along the way, something had shifted. Rafe wasn't gentle in the way the world expects. He was intense, protective in his own silent manner, and honest, brutally so. And I had discovered in myself a strength I never knew existed. Marcus left Valmont a few weeks later, disgraced and stripped of the family protection he had taken for granted. Last I heard, he was trying to rebuild in a smaller city up north, far from the ocean, and the name that had once opened every door. I never saw Sophia again. She moved away shortly after everything collapsed. As for Rafe and me, we're still together. Not in the fairy tale way. There are no grand declarations or perfect endings in our world.
But there is respect.
There is loyalty. And there is the quiet understanding that we both walked through fire and chose not to burn alone. Sometimes, late at night, when the rain falls over Valmont City and the ships move like ghosts across the dark water, I think about the woman I was before that Thursday evening. She was trusting. She was hopeful. She believed that love meant forgiveness at any cost. That woman is gone. In her place is someone who learned that revenge isn't always loud or bloody. Sometimes it's quiet.
Precise.
And sometimes, the person who helps you destroy your enemy becomes the one who helps you rebuild something stronger. I caught my fiancé cheating, so I slept with his Mafia boss brother. And in doing so, I didn't just destroy Marcus Vale. I found myself.